Honest talk. Hot talk. Kyle talk.
Talk Radio. The legendary Jeremy Kyle at Drive on Talk Radio.
Fuel your appetite for common sense conversation that puts you in the driving seat.
Jeremy Kyle
on Talk Radio.
Welcome back. This is Drive on Talk with Skills for Life. Unlock your potential and learn the skills or get the qualifications you need to get the job you want. Search Skills for Life, my friends. Welcome along. Talk Drive. Talk Radio, let's be perfectly honest, the fastest growing commercial radio station, talk radio station in the land. So stick that where the sun don't shine. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. My name's Jeremy Kyle. We are here until 7 o'clock. Not at all, Dave. I'm cool. Let's do our political panel. Alfie Striling, hello. How are you?
Good evening, Jeremy.
And Jason Reed, how are you?
I'm very well, Jeremy. How are you?
Jason, I always, honestly, Dave said this to me earlier. This is brilliant. I always think you're stuck to your chair. Is that?
I'm not. I can move.
Oh, he moves. Dave, he moves. This is great. We were really worried that you were actually strategically stuck to your chair. You move. Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome along. I'm going to do my absolute damnedest not to concentrate on the one thing I don't want to concentrate on. Levelling up. That's equally exciting. We'll start with you, Alfie. You're going to tell me, as Miata said as well, that this isn't really anything other than Blarney and there's nothing new. And you heard from a Tory MP, Matt Vickers, in Stockton South, saying he's had £16.3 million to improve his high street. There are 18,000 new jobs. There's all sorts of things happening before today's white paper. Labour, very critical. But what I was saying to Alex Norris is, how do you do this? All that Labour have said is broadband. What I myself would say is if you're saying to people in the north, where I lived for a long time, by 2030, your kids will be able to read and write like us down south. That's not just Boris Johnson. That's an appalling indictment of the last 30 years, starting with Blair saying education, education. What's been going on, Alfie?
No, I actually really agree with your last point there, Jeremy. I think, the direction of travel that's set out by government is broadly right. They're trying to close that gap in earnings. They're trying to focus on areas outside of London. And the broad, policy areas they're talking about are mainly the right buckets. I think the big problem here, I'm not going to do the whole thing of, there's no new money, et cetera, which is true. But look, they announced a lot at the spending review. And if they can just spend that well, that's a start. So I acknowledge that. No, I think the big problem really is the point you're making, which is that there isn't enough in this that gives a sense of what are they going to do different? What's going to change? Because actually we've had a series of governments, whether it's Levelling Up, or Good Society, or Industrial Strategy, or Power, Northern Powerhouse, all governments have talked this game. But actually in the last 10, 12, 15 years, things have got worse. And actually in the last 2 years under this government, the poorest have got poorer, especially outside London and the South East, and the richest have got richer. It's the opposite of levelling up. So I guess my point is just, what have they announced today that is different, that is a departure of not just this government, but also previous Labour governments of all colours, that is going to actually address the challenges they've set out?
What's your view, Jason?
I agree in part with what Alfie said there. There's a lot of promising initiatives in this paper, which has been a very long time coming. We know that the wheels of government and bureaucracy turn very slowly, so we'll have to wait and see how many years it takes for any of this to actually materialise. But exactly as Alfie said, if we can spend the money in a proper way in the north, in a more interesting and a more innovative way on these issues where it really does need more funding, like on transport and on infrastructure and on education and so on, that will be a huge step forward. And you're right that a lot of governments have talked this game. It's very easy to say we're going to level up the country, but this was at the centre of Boris Johnson's campaign in 2019 in the general election, and it's been put on hold perhaps because of COVID. But I think this is a good first step. The danger now is that this will the box will be ticked, and then the government think they can move on to something else.
I guess I'm speaking from a moral stance, right? Whether you are a Tory supporter, a Labour supporter, or any other political party, it is pretty appalling to be able to read that we're hoping by 2030 kids in the north should be able to read and write on the same level as those in the south. I don't care who you are or what your political persuasion. That is a really, really bad look on any government in the last 30 years. Can we talk about, we have to talk about it, don't we? Partygate, birthday cake gate, whatever gate you want to talk about. Tobias Elwood this morning, the boss man on the Defence Select Committee, went on television and announced that he was sending a letter in, spoke to Kay Burley. He didn't actually say to the Prime Minister to resign. He said, I think we should have a vote of no confidence, leaving himself well open, I suspect, to say if Boris Johnson wins it, well, I was just giving him a chance to prove he's OK. I'm not for MPs going on telly and do that, if I'm completely honest, because I worry about their motives. Is he a goner, as Dominic Cummings says, Alfie Striling, or will he ride this out, bring in a waft of Conservative policies and survive?
Well, look, in terms of predicting the future, I'm not sure. I think the key moment will actually be now the May elections. I think if Boris Johnson's going to go, then the political calculation in his party will be best that he takes as much of the mud and the poor political results as possible with him.
Absolutely right.
And if this May is going to be a downturn, then that's the time to do it. But maybe we can be good friends, Jeremy, because I think he should resign, but probably not over Partygate, to be honest. For my problem is the fact that the UK has suffered tens of thousands of excess deaths during this pandemic that they could have avoided. We've had the poorest economic performance in the G7, if you go back to 2019. And we've got a cost of living crisis where government has continued to do too little and has had this infighting. Those are the issues for me that should be resignation issues, not necessarily the party. So I'm very happy to talk about other things.
Very interesting, Jace.
I think you might find yourself, Jeremy, quite pleased with the news agenda in the coming weeks, because I think this story is dying. I don't think it's going to be in the headlines very much longer. It seems almost certain that Boris is going to cling on, which is less of a celebratory matter, in my opinion. I also think he should resign, but also for different reasons to the two of you. But I think this is, as you were saying, Tobias Ellwood didn't even go so far as to call for the Prime Minister's resignation, which many others in his party have done. Of course, it seems like a long time ago now that David Davis stood up in Parliament and very sensationally demanded that the Prime Minister resign. We're beyond that point. I think we're beyond the worst of Partygate for Boris. There was no one coordinating this rebellion in the same way that the rebellion against Theresa May was coordinated.
Can I just also make 2 points in a completely straight down the middle political comment? There has been no cabinet resignation, which tells me that there is nobody in the cabinet with the balls, excuse my French, to stick their head above the parapet. Johnson walked out of May's cabinet. Heseltine walked out of Thatcher's cabinet. That tells me it's not cut and dried. That is an absolute fact. When MPs have to go on television to do letters of no confidence, that tells me it's not coordinated. But perhaps the most important thing, guys, and I really do feel this really strongly, I've said it every day, we're not talking about a bunch of Tory MPs caring about the political landscape. We're talking about a bunch of MPs who are sitting on their hands waiting to know which way to move to protect their own lives and futures, right? Because they know, I've had it said to me by a mate who's a Tory MP, if I jump too soon and he stays, I'm done. If I wait too long and he goes, I'm done. That shouldn't be how you decide, and I'll get on my high horse now. I don't think that's how you should decide an elected government. I think if we lost confidence in Boris Johnson, there should be an election. I don't think a bitter and twisted, bald ex-chief of staff sat somewhere in a dark room in London should be deciding the political landscape of this country, because Dominic Cummings, whatever anybody thinks of Boris Johnson, he didn't complain about anything when he was employed. Why didn't he raise it then and walk out?
Well, we saw this, didn't we, with the Owen Paterson scandal, when the government whipped its MPs to vote through all those changes to the anti-corruption rules, and Tory MPs talked about how difficult it was to have to vote a certain way, when of course it's perfectly obvious that they voted that way because they want to stay on the government's good side.
Hold on, breaking news. Alfie, watch the smile. Sir Gary Streeter has just become the latest Tory MP to say he submitted a letter calling for a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson after Sue Gray's update on Partygate. The South West Devon MP, next door MP to Magnell in Totnes, who did one earlier, wrote on Facebook, goodness me, I cannot reconcile the pain and the sacrifice of the vast majority of the British public during lockdown with the attitude and the activities of those working in Downing Street. Accordingly, I have now submitted a letter seeking a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister. I have not come to this decision lightly. It is not my intention to say any more about this matter. Sir Gary Streeter, the third Tory MP today, behind Magnell, Anthony Magnell, and also Tobias Ellwood, which probably puts a different slant on what we just said. But let's move on, because what will be, will be. The Queen has given Prince Harry's patronage as president, I think, of the English Rugby Football Union to Kate Middleton. Views, Alfie? You probably don't like the monarchy, do you, to be fair?
No, and look, if we think that Partygate is only just news, then I do think royal patronage is a sort of scraping. Right? I think we should be talking about the millions of families that are really going to struggle over the coming month. And I think that spending airtime talking about, royal patronage, Harry, Kate, etc.
Did you say Kate or cake? I'm with you. But here's what I will say to you both. I keep saying, and this is what I think is really interesting. Every call that I get from the north, right, genuinely mean. Listen, and I don't lie. I tell you what it is. They're all saying we're done with Partygate. We want our gas bills sorted, right? We want to be able to heat our homes, feed our kids and go about our work. And we are not convinced that the Labour Party is an effective opposition. We believe they'll take us back into Europe, and he might be this and he might be that, but, you know, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And that, whether people like it or not, and I'm with you, Alfie, that's a fact. Jason, that's a fact. That's what we're hearing. And there has to be something in that. I am not in any way saying that what Johnson has done. I'm with the last caller who said he's annoyed that the man's taken an 80-seat majority and thrown it down the toilet. That's what I think, because I think he had a great opportunity.
It's incredible that we've got to this point. I think that it's imperative that the Tory party has a bit of an existential think now about what it stands for and what it wants to do in order to maintain that majority and stay in government for a little bit longer, because it's been in government for what seems like a century, and I think it's lost all sense of purpose, perhaps. And this is a little bit blasphemous as a Tory, but perhaps a little period in opposition might do us some good, to think about what we want and who we want to lead us and what we want to stand for, because at the moment, at least for as long as Boris stays in post, it seems a little bit directionless, a little bit pointless. And then, as you say, Alfie, those real issues continue to cause problems for people around the country.
And it's interesting, right, that I mean, look, listen to this, though. And these Tory MPs that are bailing out, they're Remainers. They always were. Boris Johnson will still win. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm reading. But, Alfie, I think you're right. But there's one thing that we haven't said. Because of the Met Police report and because of the time scale, Boris Johnson, I suspect, will start this avalanche of things that he said he was going to do 2.5 years ago, starting today with his announcements about levelling up. And I think he will try and curry favour's the wrong phrase, but you know what I'm trying to say. My question is, why weren't they done 2.5 years ago? And my other thing about the levelling up should have been done 30, 40 years ago. I don't understand. I think your average person, and I don't mean average disrespectfully, I agree with you both. I think the average person doesn't give a damn about birthday cake. Wait before you all text me. I think they care about their bills, their homes, their kids, their mum and dad getting an operation. That's what I think.
No, I completely agree. And in the end, I think this government was voted in off the back of discontent. You know, the idea to lead the European Union, to vote in a prime minister that was supposed to get things done.
And also Jeremy Corbyn was a massive part, Alfie. He was a massive, massive part of that, as well as Brexit, wasn't he? Come on.
Sure, but I think in the end, actually, a lot of the people voting for their representatives aren't thinking about this sort of Westminster tribal battle. They're thinking about their lives and what politicians with them, and actually the failure of politicians, as you said, Jeremy, of all colours, over the last couple of decades, and what they've seen over the last 2.5 years. They're asking the same question as you, though, Jeremy. They're asking, why has nothing changed? Why have things actually got worse?
I completely agree. Last word from you, Jason. We've got to move on.
Yeah, I think that the time is up, I'm afraid, for Boris Johnson to continue to bide his time and cling on to power, because these issues are not going away. The cost of living issue is not going away. We've got Ukraine and Russia situation boiling over. I'm sure there will be lots of other things that will come up where we will need proper leadership, and firing a few aides in number 10 and waiting around for the Metropolitan Police to issue their report is not going to help anyone.
Well, the most exciting thing about today is that we've actually known that you're not stuck to your chair and you can move. Could you do that one more time for me, Chase? Look at that. There we go. Alfie, Jace, thank you so much indeed. The political panel for Wednesday.